Okay, today we're going to be reading The Healing Heart of Recovery, which is the first of two articles that I'm going to read in the stream. Do I speak Spanish? No, I don't. Sorry. No. Um, I apologize if you can't understand me well if Spanish is your first language. Sorry. um, okay, I'm going to continue reading. Um, Hello, how are you doing? I'm about to restart this article. I'm good. I had my microphone off for a little while, so I'm gonna have to restart the reading, so that's fine. That's good. You're doing well. That's amazing. I'm gonna, yep, thank you. I might start with from the abstract again, especially since they're you two now, so that's fine. Um, okay, I'm gonna restart. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I don't think I can do much about that. I barely have the technology to turn a microphone on. I don't think I can help with Spanish speaking. Hopefully, you can find someone that can speak in Spanish for you. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start. I'll start from the abstract. Okay. Um, Background name. Medicine is traditionally considered a profession of healing, yet concepts of healing are rarely applied to mental illness, recovery being the dominant discourse. This article reports one aspect of the result of a broader exploration through a server's user lens of aspects of a place that facilitates healing in mental health care, with a resulting conceptualization of healing. How do you have a long time? Yeah, yeah. My whole introduction and the portion of the first paragraph, I had my microphone muted and I didn't realize. Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's sorted now at least. I'm glad that you can hear me, which is good. And thank you for telling me again. Okay, I'll continue on to the next part. The research material comprised the author's historical writings of her experience with mental illness and recovery, and in-depth individual views with 10 mental illness service users. Analyzed thematically, emerging ideas were further developed through an auto-ethnographically informed, reflexive, and interactive process. Healing is necessary when there have been a disruption of integrity and wholeness. Experience is suffering, offering opportunities for connection, integration, and transformation, and acquiring wisdom along the way. Healing is a journey of exploration that takes time and it's hard work. The discussion. Healing is conceptualized as the intensely personal experience at the heart of recovery, reminding us of the fundamental personal process, the heart of our journeys. As a human experience, healing potentially removes the sense of othering. That is the heart of mental illness stigma. Okay, nice. Finished the abstract. Let's get on to the introduction. Yay. Okay. Mental illness and healing are rarely spoken together. I hope you're having a good day. Good luck with what you're doing. Yeah, thank you for dropping in. I hope that you had a good experience otherwise from the little that you could get from what I was saying. Have a good day as well. Okay. Mental illness and healing are rarely spoken of together, at least in the medical specialty of psychiatry. While healing is occasionally referred to as a desired outcome, particularly in the nursing literature, it is usually not defined or explicated. This is perhaps not surprising given the dominant discourse of recovery. When I first wrote anonymously about my personal experience for a lengthy admission to hospital, an experience that was transformative in contrast to earlier admissions that were kindly less successful or indeed detrimental, I described that hospital was a place of healing. At that time, I had no professional training in psychiatry. Recovery was not a word that had entered my vocabulary. 2 decades later, working as a psychiatrist, and with all that I knew professionally about recovery, healing was still the word that I chose to represent my personal experience. Sorry, I don't know English. If I knew I'd stay a while longer. That was completely fine. I mean, if you can't get the most out of this experience, I'm sure there's somebody else that can help you with that. So I don't mind. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to hold you captive. I hope you have a nice day. Okay, moving on. This article explores the notion of healing in relation to mental illness. By offering conceptualization of healing, one outcome of a broader research project that set out to explore, through a service user lens, those aspects of place that facilitate healing in mental health care and recovery. I will then argue for a revisioning of recovering and healing at its heart. Recovery tensions. Recovery has its origin in the growth of consumer/survivor organizations in the area of, this is going to be a very long word, deinstitutionalization, amid growing dissatisfaction within the healthcare services. One of the earliest to write about recovery in its modern day was Deegan of 1988, providing a first-person account of her illness and recovery experience, distinguishing recovery from a more passive process of getting rehabilitated. She described recovery as the lived experience of people as they accept and overcome the challenge of the disability. Anthony of 1993 is credited with the original articulation of recovery orientation with mental health services, suggesting that recovery would be their guiding vision. This claim, at least at the Anglophone countries, seemed to be borne out, but with this mainstreaming of once emancipatory movement. Mainstream of this once emancipatory movement came risk. Recovery is a concept that is not without debate in psychiatric literature, the term being used inconsistently with varied implications for policy and practice. A recurring debate that is of recovery from versus recovery in. These are usually taken to mean the definition aim of recovery to live well despite the symptoms, or to live well by achieving remission of symptoms by returning to normal. These different perspectives have also been characterized as personal versus clinical recovery, being typified as tension between the service user perspective, recovery in, and health professionals, recovery from. Some commenters argue that the original vision of recovery has been hijacked or appropriated by health professionals. Bonnie and Stickley of 2008 suggests that the uniquely personal aspects of recovery risk have been diluted as they are converted to the rhetoric of policy, losing the subjectivity that lies at the heart of the lived experience. In 1998, 2 years after I began my psychiatry specialty training, New Zealand adopted a recovery approach to guide its mental health services delivery. My clinical practice is informed by the principles of recovery, a tick box of competencies that tell me that the skills and knowledge that I need. However, when I recently began autoethnographically research my personal experiences of illness, I resisted. The recovery I had come to know psychiatry failed to capture the heartfelt quality of my acceptance as a service user. Setting recovery aside, I turned to healing. Healing as a concept. Medicine, of which psychiatry considers itself, was traditionally considered a healing profession, tracing its roots back to the Hippocratic medicine of ancient Greece, that melded a healing heart with specific discipline. The Enlightenment of the 18th century saw a marked shift towards scientific evidence informing the understanding of illness, hence the role of a physician. More recently, in the face of increasing technological sophistication and disease focus, many authors argue that modern medicine has lost the art of healing and become more disconnected from the patients it treats. The growing interest in healing has arisen the contention that modern medicine is more interesting in curing than healing. As in recovery, there remains some debate about whether the healing necessities are true. As with recovery, there remains some debate about whether healing necessities cure. Oh, okay. Necessitates, maybe? Okay, moving on. Much of the recent research directed at an understanding of healing has occurred in palliative end-of-life care, where there may be no expectation of cure. The word heal derived from the Old English helion, a condition of state of being whole, safe, or sound. It is defined to make sound or whole. While authors continue to avert healing remains enigmatic, certain attributes are consistent with the literature. Healing is described as an intensely personal process or journey, with each person's experience being subjective and unique. This may be perceived as a journey back towards a previous state, or more commonly, forward movement and transformation. Authors suggest healing is an active and energy-requiring process. Others that it may be serendipitous in the context of relationship. Healing is multidimensional: physical, emotional, intellectual, social, and spiritual, with varying individual emphasis. Lost my place. Healing may be accompanied by a sense of wholeness and involves the relief of transcendence of suffering. Mount Boston and Cohen of 2007 conceptualized healing as being movement along a continuum of suffering and anguish at one extreme to the experience of integrity and wholeness at the other. Similarly, in an attempt to operantally define healing, Agnew of 2005 suggested that it is the personal experience of transcendence of suffering. He describes suffering as an intrinsically disagreeable experience, that is, angst of an order different than pain. Through it may involve pain, but subsumes non-physical dimensions, social, psychologically, cultural, and spiritual, associated with being a person. This existential view of suffering was captured in Cassiel's 1982, widely quoted explanation that suffering occurs when an impending destruction of the person is perceived. It continues until the threat of disintegration is past, or until the integrity of the person can be restored in some other manner. Sorry, I'm just going to take a drink for a second. Not off to a great start. I'm messing up a lot, but that's okay. You can get through this. Okay. Connection, wholeness, and finding meaning are recurring themes in healing literature. Connection is often expressed as a function of healer-patient relationships, but others broaden connectedness beyond the interpersonal. Monet in 2007, in a phenomenological study of people with a life-threatening illness, identified 4 types of healing connections with oneself, others, and the phenomenal world, as experienced through the 5 senses, with ultimate meaning. While most authors emphasize a sense of wholeness, definitions are elusive. Agnew, 1994, suggested that the wholeness can be different from each person. Some authors refer to resorting or achieving balance across the physical, emotional, intellectual, social, and spiritual domains. Cassell of 1982 argued that the transcendence is probably the most powerful way in which one restores to wholeness. Although defined in the Oxford Dictionary as the action of surmounting or rising above. Cassiel suggested that transcendence is a deeply spiritual experience that locates the person in the larger landscape. Oh, hello, thank you. Follow is much appreciated. I hope you enjoy your time here. Okay. Oh, nice place. Okay. Description of having a resonance with the project that set out to explore place and healing. Healing is necessary when there has been a disruption or integrity or wholeness experienced as suffering. Franklin of 1962, reflecting on his own experiences in concentration camps, suggested that suffering ceases to be suffering in some way at the moment it finds meaning. Finding meaning is a fundamental process of healing. Telling stories as the heart of those of the efforts to find and make meaning in our experiences and lives, the lives of others. Hartner and Bochner asserted that there is an inextricable experience between narrative and healing. Unexpected life experiences call forth stories, and narrative provides the hindsight to make meaning of the past and move towards a more hopeful future. It is these ideas of story, of journey, from suffering to connection, wholeness, and meaning that were taken forward into this study. Okay, so that was sort of like a taste of what the bulk of the article that we're going to be reading. The next little section is just going to be about the study aim or question of the article and what they're trying to express through it. So I'm going to read you that quickly because it's not entirely interesting, but it's good context for the rest of it. The landscape of mental health services has changed almost unrecognizably over the past 50 years, with large, often geographical remote asylums being replaced by small acute mental health units, usually co-located in general hospitals. The research evidence for the evaluation of quality inpatient care is limited to a relatively weak evidence base. It's really cool because I'm learning English. Oh, that's great! I hope that you can forgive me for being terrible at reading, but I'm glad that you're finding this helpful. And there's going to be a lot of academic language in here, so if you ever want me to explain what those words mean, I sometimes I don't even know what they mean. So if there is something that you want me to define, I can define it for you if you need. So that's all good. Or like if I come across a long word, I can define it for you if you need, because academic terminology is quite difficult for people who have English as a first language, let alone people if it's their second or third. So I can just tell you what it means if I come across a new language like that. Okay. Lost my place again. Some authors suggest that this is neglect due to its focus on community services, with the community portrayed as good and hospitals as bad. There is, however, considerable commentary on the state of acute inpatient psychiatry, predominantly expressing concerns. The research question, what makes a place of healing? In mental health care and recovery had its origins in the concern that we still do not have it right with respect to the places in which we provide mental health care. Aspects of place that facilitate healing in mental health care and recovery were explored through a service user lens. The focus in this article is on the resulting conceptualization of healing as a journey of exploration. Okay, I think the term conceptualization might be a bit iffy. Yeah. So conceptualization is sort of like to compress something with complex meaning into something simpler to understand initially, so that you can move into understand it better. When you conceptualize something, you take something that's complex and you turn it into a more simple concept that's easier to understand. So, yeah. I'm just going to be a thesaurus for the rest of this. This is going to be fun. Okay. The next word, I don't know what it means either, but it's probably something psychiatry-based. Autointegraphy, literally the study of culture in self. Can you write that word? Oh, sure. Conceptualization. There's only one L in conceptualization. Yep, it's not auto-correcting me, which means it's probably spelled right. There you go. That's how you spell conceptualization. Cool. Okay. So autointegraphy, they're about to explain to us what that means. I'm learning something as well here. Literally the study of culture of the self is a research methodology. Okay, I think I'll explain what a methodology is. Okay, a methodology is a combination of two English words, method and ideology. So you have a method, which is a way of doing things, and an ideology is sort of a belief. So you combine those to get a methodology, which is sort of like it's an academic term for a way of doing something which someone personally believes to be correct. I'll type that one out so you also have that in your little dictionary as well. Methodology. Is that how you spell it? I think that's how you spell it. Methodology. Okay, there you go. Cool. In which the researcher has an active presence, usually as a participant. With its origins as in postmodernism, autointegraphy turns on its head the usual scientific notion of the neutral objective researcher. It argues that as a participant in its own research, I am close as I can get to the social process with the potential for greater depth and understanding. In autointegraphy, bias isn't acknowledged and anticipated. My positionality is avert as I can make it. Sorry. Okay, so every time you hear the word autointegraphy, it means the study of culture. So whenever they're referring to autointegraphy, they just mean the study of culture. Okay, anything else? Positionality. Positionality, you can just make that simpler and just say position, in all honesty. I don't know why they use the term positionality to describe the word position, but I don't know, it's an academic article. They say fancy things for a reason. It's just a bunch of fluff. Oh, thank you. Hello. I hope you're having a nice day. We're just getting through an academic article on psychiatry in a medical context, so I hope you'll enjoy that. Okay, on to the next paragraph, which I guess is a more I think this is a quote by the author who wrote this. I had been sent to complete with Winter Woolies to be admitted to the Hall, which is a private psychiatric hospital in the southern regions of New Zealand. I went there not knowing what to expect. All I knew was that I was depressed and desperate. Depressed and desperate. Okay, sorry. After several years of aggressive treatment with multiple drugs and repeated admission to hospital for ECT, I was getting nowhere. I was 31 years old and my life was a mess. I was unable to work and I was becoming increasingly dependent. There seemed to be nowhere to go but to die. Okay, so they're explaining their personal experience with, oh damn, I got 4 people watching me. That's cool. I think that's the most people I've ever had. That's kind of nice. Hello, people. I'm just reading. Hope you enjoy it. Okay. So that describes their personal experience with what it was like for them to be in a mental institution in New Zealand. Well, this was several decades ago, so it's definitely improved since then. But their personal experience about 20 years ago was just, have drugs, we'll send you to the hospital if need be, but, medicine's the answer. You don't need therapy, guys. Therapy's a scam, you know that. But the opinion and like mainstream mindset towards mental health has changed a lot since then. So I'm going to guess that it has improved a lot, but since this article was written more recently, I'm guessing that there's still something that they want to express about the gap between healing mentally and providing proper care for people with mental health issues. Okay, on to the next portion of the paragraph. The research process foregrounded my personal experience of admissions to hospital and dialogue with other service users who self-identified as being somewhere when unwell. They considered healing for them. In approaching this research, the intention was to walk with people who, in the usual course of events, would be admitted to a mental health unit when unwell. There were a few inclusion and exclusion criteria, except ages from 18 to 65. At least one admission to a mental health unit for more than a few days, and having been somewhere when unwell that the participant considered healing. Not wanting to make assumptions about what might be healing for others, the definitions in healing were deliberately left open. This is reflected in the range of places that we identified. Okay, so they're going to They're going to compare professional mental health institutions, like for example, mental health hospitals and even just regular old hospitals, I'm assuming, with what people personally found to be healing for them, which is going to be interesting. So that could mean like a spiritual sense, a mental sense. Maybe they found that spending time with their community is better for their mental health than it was in a more professional setting. So that's going to be interesting. Okay. Okay. Ethics approval was gained in 2012, and 10 people, in addition to myself, were recruited through a service user network by word of mouth and snowballing. 8 women and 2 men. All names changed to protect the confidentiality of these individuals. Most being interviewed on 2 occasions. The resulting data comprised historical writing, the authors, and in-depth individual interviews, which we transcribed and analyzed thematically. With research, development of emerging ideas through an auto-ethographically informed interactive process. A reflexive back and forth movement between my story and their stories, making connections and developing meanings. Participants were not used. Okay, hospitals are professionals, mental health support by spiritual and emotional. Yeah. Mental health hospitals are a professional group which deals with mental health issues. And mental support is by spiritual and emotional. Hospital staff can still provide mental support in the form of therapy. I don't think there's a definite line we can draw between the two. They do provide different services, but it can just be for the same issue. It is what it is. The point of this article is to distinguish that there is a difference between the two, and they both offer different services. And while they are distinguished, we need to look into what those differences are and how we can use those differences and potential benefits to benefit the other. Because not all people will have access to these personal and specific places which help them with their mental health. And that public health sectors should be something which are able to provide proper care for those with mental health issues. Because otherwise, there are going to be a lot of people that don't have that individual access when they are struggling with their mental health. Okay, good to do. Where was I? Participants were not asked what their diagnoses have been given, though some told me that they had been depressed and at times suicidal. Others described experiences that were called psychosis, or that I recognized as psychosis, while several people talked about being labeled with one or more illnesses. None overtly claimed that the labels for themselves. Okay. Therapy didn't help me emotionally, but spiritually made me think about myself because I was negative of myself. Then it made me switch to being positive now. Okay. That's very interesting. Okay. Well, it's interesting that about your personal experience. I'd be happy to hear more about it, especially since we are, going to be talking about it a lot in this article that we're going to be discussing. We are going to be talking about it. Yeah. We are going to be talking about it in an academic sense. So there are going to be a lot of definitions and like straightforward ideas which might not be applicable to people's personal experiences, especially since I have spoken to other people that have gone through similar issues and they've expressed to me that that didn't cover their personal experience. And I don't think it's quite supposed to, because everyone's experience is unique, and they aren't trying to discredit that, but just trying to make the general health sector more welcoming for people who don't have those spaces. It's great that therapy helped you improve your condition spiritually wise, but I'm sorry it couldn't help you with your mental issues. Yeah, but it's good that you got something out of it, because there are a lot of people that do get absolutely nothing out of like individually based therapy. But I'm glad that you did get something out of it, especially since that kind of thing can be quite expensive. Yeah, I'm glad that you have a more positive view on yourself now. That's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna continue reading. Okay. Oh, we're on to results, right? Okay. We identified a range of places that were healing for us. These included both historical and current mental health facilities and community places as a respite, friends' homes, and an art studio. Our length of stay or association with these places varied. So, like the length of time that they spend within these communities or places. From days and weeks to several years, the length of association was particularly important in how places facilitated healing. Healing is a journey that is hard work and takes time. Some people chose to talk about more than one environment that had been healing for them. A few also spoke of places experienced in either their personal or working lives that had healing characteristics. Our experience and understanding of our healing places was contextual. In telling our stories, we offered rich pictures of what it had been like to be unwell and how that had changed. Although not originally a focus of the research, it was these descriptions that supported a conceptualization of healing and provided a context for understanding, the means by which a place can facilitate healing and recovery. Oh, bet I've got a wholesome chat. This is so nice. Okay, the next paragraph is called "What It's Like to Be Unwell." Nice. And in case nobody has been unwell ever, this is going to be a very informative article for you. Okay, cool. Our stories of illness were redolent with threat, fear, and intense emotions, described in terms of such as maelstrom. Maelstrom? That's an interesting word. I might actually look that one up, just for the people here. I'll look up real quick. I've never seen that word before. Okay, the meaning of maelstrom. I don't know how to pronounce that. A situation or state of confusion, movement, or violent turmoil. Huh. I guess you learn something new every day. I've never seen that word before. Okay, I'll chuck it in the chat just to have the word out there. That is a very good word. Huh. Okay. Maelstrom. There you go. New word in vocabulary. Fierce fire and rock bottom. We waited in fear for the often unknowing and inexplicable to happen, taking us away from the selves that we knew we were suffering. At the time, okay, so the next part's going to be a quote. At the time, I think nothing of it. It made sense. I was struggling with emotions that had no form, no recognition, no meaning. a maelstrom of confusion. Sometimes the only way out seemed to be to die. Okay. And this was by a participant which we are going to call Jackie. I think the place to start will be when I was at rock bottom. I was talking to a wall, talking to my cigarettes, listening to my voices. I stayed in my room with that out-of-control fire that was inside me. This was by a patient that was called David. These were experiences that we struggled to make sense of. We identified feeling lost, confused, and uncertain with respect to our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. Most stories identified a loss of hope. We experienced our illnesses as relentless, with nothing changing beyond our control. Next one's also a quote. I went from sky high to over-medicated and quite lost. The plan that I had for my life was being completely dashed. This is from a patient called Fran. It seems like I've lost my essence. From a patient called Barb. And it was like a cartwheel with two cogs, and it was going over and over and over. This one's also from David. David's very profound. He's doing a really good job. Disconnection was a recurring theme in our stories. It was experienced multidimensionally. We described disconnection from aspects of ourselves, from others, and the physical realm. We also experienced physical and cultural disconnection. I described when depressed, going away to a place where I cannot hear myself, and no one can hear me. A place where I cannot be soothed, and I cannot soothe myself. I think the way to deal with everything was for me to disengage from everything. This is from a patient called Emily. And the biggest fear is that I won't come back from it this time. This one's also from Bob, sorry. Okay. Using metaphor, we powerfully described experiences that conveyed a sense of fragmentation or even disintegration. I said of my illness that my word would fall apart, I would fall apart, as others described being scattered, shattered, smashed, and broken. I entered into this manic kind of panic. They could see how fragmented I was becoming. I realized that when I get very scattered with so many thoughts and creative impulses, that I do need some kind of containment. This is from a patient called Margaret. I had broken down completely. I was shattered. Your whole sense of personal trust in yourself gets so smashed and broken. This is from a patient called Alice. Again. Has Alice spoken? No, not yet. Sorry. These words provoke a visceral reaction in response to the threat of our integrity or wholeness, powerfully capturing the subject's threat that was the core of our suffering. Metaphors of healing is the name of the next paragraph. Early in this research process, I asked what healing meant to me. I said that healing was being able to get on with my life. Even then, I knew that these words did not do justice to my experience. I spoke the words, and still, when I consider healing, my hand goes to my heart. Other research participants similarly endeavored to describe what healing meant for them, but there were limitations in this articulation. I still have a sense that aspects of our experiences were beyond words. One way of dealing with this affability was the use of metaphor. I described my process as growing into my skin. I came to fill the nooks and crannies, those places of emptiness within the shell that was my skin. I grew into myself, becoming whole again. This one was from Jackie. I described healing as getting into the heart of me, piecing myself back together, growing into my skin. Oh, okay, so this one was from the author. That's interesting. Their name probably isn't Jackie, but did they change their own name? Oh no, they didn't. This one is just the author's name. So if you ever hear me quote Jackie, that's the author who wrote this piece. Okay. Other participants described aspects of healing as a nice warm bandage, blooming, taking off a tight hat, learning to do the rides, stripping right back to build yourself up again. The blocks were laid out, scattered everywhere, and starting to come together. Those moments of contentment, when we knew this too must pass. These phrases brought to life an experience describing experiences of movement and change, transformation, and sometimes transcendence. A year of seasons, a year of unpicking myself and piecing myself back together. A week before I left the hall, it snowed. I have a photo album from the time. Just by the stories of what people are saying, I wonder what caused the maelstrom in the first place. I think they might get into that because I think they specified that they're not going to be talking about specific diagnoses, so at least not in a clinical way. But I think they're going to be talking about their journeys to recovery at the very least. So that'll be interesting to talk about. And they might talk about what may have triggered their particular circumstances. I'm not entirely sure, but it'll be interesting to see. I completely agree with you. Okay. A week before I left the hall, it snowed. I have a photo album from that time, and the first photo was me sliding down the hill in the snow, on the seat of my pants, with such a look of joy. I look back at the photo. I want to laugh. My heart fills. I have my life back and more. That was a quote from the author who wrote this article. And these experiences are building ourselves up again and growing into our skins. The blocks coming together, a journey towards wholeness. Sometimes this was a return before, but sometimes these experiences took us beyond where we were. We grew. Okay, that was a very sweet and quite poetic paragraph. We're going to moving on to a paragraph called A Journey That Takes Time and Is Hard Work. Healing was both a journey and destination. The journey was not an easy one. It was hard and often painful. Some of us referred to this as work. I remember my university supervisor's surprise when I commented that despite my many years of training and then work as a psychiatrist, my subsequent years as a doctoral student, my journey to recovery was the hardest work I had ever done. In my early experiences at the Hall, which is the institution that we're going to be referring to in this article, I was struggling with emotions that had no form, no recognition, no meaning, a maelstrom of confusion. So much running from what I didn't understand and trying so hard not to run. On this journey to heal, I needed to not run away rather than disconnect. I needed to stay with the confusion, with the sense of being battered by emotions that I didn't understand. Alice described that hard work and pain associated with her process, but powerfully identified her belief that it was necessary. This is dealing with a deep, deep pain. I worked hard and I went through the pain and difficulty, but it was worth it. I knew that I was going to become a psychiatric cripple, or if I got the right support, that I wanted to deal with it face into it. Okay. So, I don't think there's much I can comment on that part. They seem to be using the word maelstrom quite a lot. They must have some kind of personal connection to it, which is kind of interesting. Okay. Similarly, I can't speak. Similarly, Barb anticipated the pain that she expected to go through in the process of facing her demons. I felt my heart really in a tight grip. I didn't know what to do. It's not what I wanted to. It's not that I didn't want to get well. I didn't want to go through the pain, and I thought would be involved. Sorry, these sentences are kind of jumbled. It's almost an intuitive knowing that the process that you're going to go through, is not going to be an easy one, but it's your only way out. I really didn't do Barb's quote justice, but I tried my best. Hopefully that's good enough for you to understand. Okay. Colin words evocatively captured the work and effort involved. A sense of progress kept me going, breaking rocks, cutting track, and moving forward. In this process, he bloomed. I'm a changed man. I applied myself, and I was and I was interested. If you're interested in something you're learning, then you bloom through the learning. So that's more quotes by Colin. Okay. He described the journey of healing as taking time, and this was one of the differentiating features of the places that we identified as healing. For some participants, the healing was heaven, a haven, providing a time out of sorts for a few days or weeks. Others had a lengthy association with our place of healing, measured in months or years, embarking on a journey of exploration. It takes a long time to recover from something like that. You're moving your life and You're moving your life and practicing what you're learning. You need from week to week to develop that skill a little bit more. Then it goes down to another level. Cool. Most people's days are talking a week. It's ridiculous. They go in there completely off the rails and get medicated, and 3 days later, they might be becoming symptom-free, but then they're out on the street again. Full-blown psychosis needs time. For me, at least, it does. So that was another quote from another person that had taken part. Okay, the next paragraph is called Exploration, Connection, and Integration. As a counterpoint to our sense of being lost and disconnected, fragmented, our descriptions of the healing journey suggest experiences of connection, integration, transformation. Exploration was a necessary part of these journeys. What does healing mean to you? Well, there is the medication side of it, which is a chemical thing that might stop hallucinations. But then again, the whole other side of which is the education, the life skills, the trust, the collaboration of all that chucked and almost outweighs the medication. Completely agree with that. Stopping the symptoms doesn't, affect the core cause of your issues, especially in the case of mental illness. And if that core piece isn't going to grow or be changed from this medication, it obviously isn't. As the title of the previous paragraph says, the journey takes time and it's hard work. If you aren't able to address what the core or heart of your issues are, you're never going to move forward. And I think another one of Colin's quotes summarizes that very, very well, in that going through and developing how to manage your disease, not necessarily without medication, but without the implication that the medication is the sole cure, because there's never going to be a cure for it. It's just going to be something that becomes more or less manageable for the rest of your life. Sorry, I'm just going to get rid of this tab because it's affecting the upload speed. Okay. Moving on to the next part. We talked of facing or facing into and finding your essence. I wanted them to just fix me and make everything go away. But it was that knowing that you have to face it. I had to face my demons, and I have to do this my own way. A person has to find their own wellness within themselves. Your world becomes so shut down, but there's a big wide world out there, and you've got to grow towards it. And shying away and isolating yourself isn't really the answer. Especially if you're trying to corner into your own mind and trying to solve mental illness, it can be a very internalized process, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. You can always, look for examples in the world, try to calm yourself through external factors. Seeking help through interpersonal routes might be your best, sorry. I'm not speaking very well today, and I'm not entirely sure why. It may be your best bet in terms of being able to use that connection in order to relax yourself, be able to even reflecting internally can be improved by looking through examples of your interactions with other people and what other people's advice can provide with that sort of thing. Okay. Exploration opens us up to possibilities, facilitating discovery. and testing of the connections that underpinned our healing. Our experiences of connection were multidimensional, cognitive, connecting thoughts, developing understanding, emotional, beginning to recognize link and emotions and experiences, intra and interpersonal, connecting and developing relationships with ourselves and others, and phenomenal, connecting with our senses and our physical environments. Okay. I think different forms of therapy help me to contextualize the reality of what happens when I do have psychosis, and that's really important because I'm understanding and placing the experience and the whole continuum, and place of your life is important. It is not an isolated kind of thing that happens. It's part of the fabric of who you are. Okay, I might include continuum as a word that might need to be defined. I'll quickly define that for you. Continuum. Continuum, a continuous sequence in which adjacent elements are not perceptibly different from each other, but extremes are quite distinct. So a continuum is another way of saying spectrum. So like in the continuum of healthcare, for example, you've got the spectrum of different types of healthcare that can be provided. When you talk about the space-time continuum, it's not something that's like split up into specific areas. It's something that is vast and wide, and there isn't any particular place where it starts and stops, but you can tell that things are different from one another. So I'll just add continuum into our little thesaurus glossary dictionary that we're creating. Continuum, it's spelled with two U's. Okay, moving on. I know my mind plays tricks. If I can hold it back, it makes me feel completely in control. And that's what the core of it is. Yeah, it's reconnection. It's like you've gone off to do this thing. And it's like, come on. In you come. I'm calling you in, strand by strand, tying it together. It's so firm. And then putting it back together where it belongs. That's cool. That sounds like a real quote. The others use a lot of like very, it's hard to describe, but very like firm and well-defined language. This one sort of sounds more joyful and expressive, which is kind of nice to see. As we explored, looking more deeply into ourselves, we began to make sense of, to understand our experiences. Sorry, my phone is going off a lot. I'm going to turn it off so it doesn't keep doing that because it's very annoying. Okay. Okay. The phone is off. It's no longer going to annoy me. Let's continue on with the reading. Okay. Okay, as we explored looking more deeply into ourselves, we began to make sense of, to understand our experiences, making connections. We developed wisdom, finding ourselves and re-engaged in our worlds. Water. My mouth is very dry. Okay. All along the way, what I was doing was learning about myself, learning about what made me tick, what makes me sad, angry, happy, scared, and why. Learning about myself with that knowledge or wisdom, I was able to leave the institution, go back into the big wide world, look at myself again, and use that knowledge to change what I needed to. Okay. Interesting. Healing is necessary when there has been a disruption of integrity or wholeness. While often considered in relation to physical integrity, such as lacerations or broken limbs, to define fucking laceration, Okay, a laceration just means a cut, or like when your skin is broken. I'm going to include that as well. Um, Laceration just means to cut or to have like an open wound. Okay, we experience an existential disruption. Defined by our illness in both label and experience, disconnected fragments and lost, we suffered. Our life's meaning had collapsed with little hope for change. Just as Cassiel of 1982 suggested that suffering continues until the threat of disintegration is past, and as the antithesis of our fragmentation, sorry, Barb alluded to healing evolving the process of integration, strand by strand tying it together to sew firm and then putting it back where it belongs. Integration is one of those processes that perhaps beyond explication. I think explication is pretty synonymous with the word explanation. So I'm not going to define that one because it's just another way of saying explanation. So if you ever say explication, it just means explanation. I don't know why we have two words for it which sound incredibly similar. I don't think there's any point to it, but we have them. Cool. We knew it took time and practice. Through integration, I filled the nooks and crannies of the shell that was my skin, becoming whole. Just as Barb reconnected with her thoughts, and Alice took the time and faced her illness, her skills going down to another level. Utilizing Margaret's words, the integration, the experiences, became part of the fabric of who we are as people, and in the process we became whole again. The gaps were filled, the cracks were mended. Although I wonder if anyone can be truly whole, perhaps we are all works in progresses. Wisdom, some combination of education practice, apprenticeship, personal experience, and deliberate reflections about life matters. It implies a deeper form of meaning, of knowing. Be grounded in experience, the evolution of wisdom required both time and effort. Exploration had elements of both doing and being, and I wonder if those moments of stillness, of being with ourselves, that integration occurred. Perhaps wisdom is the expression in words, actions, and emotions of integration and integrity. And the stories that we told were an expression of that wisdom, conceptualized as journey and destination, or perhaps resting place. I'm going to look at what destination, sorry. I read that wrong. I thought it said destination. I was like, no, it's destination as in location. Okay, healing was an intensely personal process of exploration which we found ourselves. Facilitating connections, we developed understanding with time and practice. We integrated our hard-earned wisdom, developing meaning and becoming whole. Our sufferings were transformed. We arrived in these places distressed and struggling with illness that we did not understand. Disconnected and fragmented, we had lost ourselves. In response to those experiences, a place that was healing was the one that offered a safe haven, metaphorically, holding us enough in collaborative environments of care, hope, and trust, while providing a creative space and opportunities for the hard work of exploration that underpinned our healing. Okay. The next paragraph is called Discussion, Healing the Heart of Recovery. The capacity to heal is a universal, ambient, unique human experience. Discussion in healthcare literature is largely independent of medical speciality or diagnosis. Recovery is applied in mental health in a context-specific space. In mental health literature, there is little mention of the concept of healing, but are we in fact talking about the same thing? As a researcher, I decided to set aside the dominant mental health discourse of recovery. As I read more widely, exploring the literature and distinction became blurred, I discovered Deegan of 1996 describing recovery as a journey of the heart. or perhaps I should say rediscovered. I remember reading Deegan as a junior trainee and becoming inspired. But put her work experience-based writing aside, as I continued my training, becoming a psychiatrist, conceptualizations of personal recovery as an active journey involving change have resonance with healing. Neither recovery nor healing requires an absence or disease or cure, and both involve the core, unique, and deeply personal processes that emphasize connectedness, meaning, and transitions to identity. Okay, kind of lost my place. Moving on. There is, however, a hint of difference in some literature. Perhaps. Sorry, my brain is drawing a blank. It's getting a little bit difficult, but I'm going to try my best. Okay, let's do this. There is, however, a hint of difference in some literature, perhaps reflecting the recovery form and recovery debate. Deegan described recovery as a journey of the heart, but also that recovery is an attitude or stance and a way of approaching the day's challenges. Similarly, Anthony of 1993 wrote recovery as a way of living a satisfying life, even with the limitations caused by illness. In contrast, the wholehearted endeavor of our healing recovery, for me, still carries a suspicion of personal deficit to be struggled against. Both Anthony and Deegan worked in rehabilitation psychiatry, and their early work was written within a frame of disability, with Anthony explicitly referring to adjustment to disability being part of recovery. My journey was one of personal recovery, developing a life that is satisfying and hopeful. I am able again to contribute to society. But as I skied down that slope in the fields behind the hall, and when I walked out the door for the last time, I also experienced a sense of peace and joy and of wholeness. There was a qualitative difference to my experience. Colin's blooming, Margaret's being in the sanctities of creation, and Barb's movements of contentment that is often missing from the formulations of recovery. These qualities are perhaps better captured by the concept of healing. Okay, next part. Deegan was described recovery. Sorry, that was a really bad sentence. Why did I read it that way? Deegan has described recovery as a process of healing and transformation, suggesting that the concept was not necessarily the problem. Rather, it was the recovery. I had come to know as a clinician recovery's translation from the richness of experience, often expressed as a metaphor, into the professional language of principles and policy, resulting in a loss of the heartfelt subjective qualities of personal recovery. I began this project disconnected from recovery, but I have to come to re-embrace the concept of healing at its heart. I suggest that it is healing that I achieve recovery. Healing reminds us of the fundamental and personal processes at the heart of our journeys. As a universal human experience, healing removes the sense of othering that is at the heart of mental illness stigma. Recovery requires a widened vision of incorporation, communication, community, and societal issues, and responsibilities such as stigma, social integration, and rights for citizenship. Okay, that's the end of that paragraph. Wow, that was a really short piece. We're barely an hour in. It usually takes me a couple of hours to read these. But we're done to the conclusion now. So, almost done. We're almost about to move on to our next piece, which is called Filtered Through a Lens, Unauthorized Picture Taking of People with Dwarfism in Public Places. So that's going to be quite different from the article which we're reading at the moment. But I think it's also going to be quite interesting and quite eye-opening for me personally, as I don't think I know anyone personally who has dwarfism. But first, we're going to finish off the conclusion of this article, and then we'll be done. Okay, we'll be down to doing that. Healing is conceptualized here as the intensely personal experience at the heart of recovery, as a process and destination. Healing is necessary when there has been a disruption of integrity and wholeness experienced as suffering. He described healing as a journey of exploration that takes time, hard work, facilitating connection and integration, understanding and wisdom. It is in the exploration that healing can occur, implying that there is no passive or even active recipients of care. Rather, we are active participants creating or making use of the opportunities available to us. Developing a story that is uniquely ours, a recovery that recognizes me as the one that embraces and put at its heart the lived experience of mental illness and healing. Okay. Nice. Okay, I'm just going to quickly read the limitations and then we'll be done. The study was offered a formulation of mental illness, but the methodology and autointhography comes with limitations. Aspects of healing in this context deserve further exploration from a service user perspective. This might include the notion of healing as a journey, exploration, and the forms that this can take. The opportunities for connection in mental health care is usually considered in the context of interpersonal relationships. But the wider healing literature on the small study suggests that the connection can be multidimensional. The concept of healing connects mental health to the wider healthcare and social science literature, creating opportunities for multidisciplinary research and understanding. Okay, nice. So that's finished. We are done with the first article. Yay! If you want to check out the article, it's by Jackie Liggins, and they are from the International Journal of Social Psychiatry. This one was written in 2018. Okay, I might take a small break from reading because my vocal cords do hurt a bit, and I'll be writing for a little bit, but I will be answering people's questions and such, and talking as I do that. So I'm going to be a little more social for a bit. So feel free to write in, and I'll chat with you either about the article or just about day-to-day stuff. I don't really mind. So I'll just be here. Or if you want any definitions for me to go over, that's good too. But otherwise, I will be writing, and I will answer questions if needed to. Cool.